There are no alternative political systems. You're being naive. Advanced late capitalism, which advantages the most rich, powerful people in the world. What? Socialists like George Soros? Socialists like Jeff Bezos? I've got news for you. Socialists don't run multi-billion-dollar corporations. That's not what socialism is. Not that I'm a pro-socialist person, because I'm not a pro-big state solution guy. I'm all about breaking down into communities. That's where I think the solution lies. But Yanis Varoufakis, he's an old-school socialist. He's actually been in government. He's faced down the bureaucrats at the EU. He's faced down the fat cat corporate elites that want to take away your power continually. Let's hear what Yanis Varoufakis had to say on my podcast, Under the Skin. He talks about alternative solutions. If you want to listen to the whole episode of Under the Skin, you can listen to it on Luminary. That's a platform that my podcast is on. You can get it on Apple. You can get it loads of places. If you want it, you can get it. I want to know what you think about these ideas. I want to know if you believe that there are alternative solutions. I want to know if you think Yanis Varoufakis could be part of the solution and if his ideas are relevant and pertinent. Have a look at this conversation, and at the end there will be questions. When you talk about, or when we talk about these, the boldness and radical and how radical these necessary changes are, my mind is, I am drawn to questions of scale. When we talk about society and change and the scale of change, one problem that occurs to me is to enact this type of change, to oppose the kind of forces and interests that you are describing, those that are currently in power. It would require huge resistance. But if you create comparable monoliths, i.e. a powerful state, then in a sense, we run the risk of replicating the trajectory that we're already experiencing. When we're talking about change, Yanis, of this nature, are we talking about dismantling the nation state? What are we talking about creating? And how does anarcho-syndicalism play into this? Are we talking about sort of localized democracies, global confederacies? What does it look like, do you feel?
It's funny you should ask me this question. I wasn't going to do it because I'm not very good at self-promotion or promoting things that I've done. But a book of mine is just coming out next week. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because your question has been constantly torturing me for decades now. The question of scaling up. Because, 10 people can get together, disappear somewhere in Yorkshire or here in Egina, and we can have a nice little commune, and democracy works perfectly well. We like each other and so on. Of course, some tyranny can create, we can create a sect that is tyrannical and horror, and then everybody commits suicide. But the question is, assuming that a small group of people can run a commune beautifully, how do you scale it up? And how do you do it without the all-powerful state, which is at some point corrupted and usurped by greedy, self-seeking politicians or bureaucrats? And how would markets work without capitalism? What does it mean to say that we've done away with capitalism, but not with markets? Because we will always need markets. People make some artifacts, they want to sell them. I mean, you're not going to stop them from doing that. That's not socialism. That's craziness. That's Pol Pot, Cambodia. So it was about 15 years ago when my partner and I said to me that she's never going to listen to my criticisms of capitalism again or take me seriously, because they mean sweet nothing. That's the expression she used. Unless I sit down and write a book in which I explain how the world would work if capitalism had gone. So, I've been resisting doing this because it's not an easy task. In the last 2 years, I sat down and I wrote one. It's a political science fiction where I try to answer. Let me give you some clues. Imagine a corporate structure where there is no management. So, for instance, I've worked in one of those companies, so this is not totally fictional. I've worked in one of those companies in near Seattle, in Washington State, in the United States, some years ago. And what was remarkable was that there were no bosses. Nobody told you what to do. It was complete flat management. Everybody did whatever they wanted to do. So when they told me that this is how they work, I just couldn't believe it. And I asked them, okay, so tell me, how do projects get done? And the answer is, well, we have an intranet within the company. We put posts up, somebody saying, I want to work on that. Who wants to work with me? So whoever wanted to join Peter, joined Peter. And then they could leave. They had, their workstations, their computers and so on, were on desks with wheels, so they could move them around. And I said, okay, but how do you decide whom to hire? Well, they said, well, if one of us thinks that we need a graphic designer or a computer scientist, whatever, or an economist, no? We put again a post on the intranet saying, I think that we should hire a graphic designer who wants to join me in a search. And 3 people go together and they put out an advertisement out there. They advertise the position. They shortlisted some people, they interviewed them. Anybody in the company could participate in the interview, and then the whole company voted, do we bring them in or out? And I said, okay, what about pay? How do you decide who gets what? You can't all get the same amount of money. They said, oh, look, we have the pie, the total revenue of the firm is divided into 4 parts. One is fixed costs, rents, computers, blah, 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 blah. That goes. The second one is a basic wage for everyone, from the secretary to the computer whiz-kid, gets the same basic salary, which was quite high back then in that company. But nevertheless, it was a basic salary. And how much that would be was something they voted on from different options. 1 person, 1 vote. Okay, and then they said there's another slice for R&D, money we set aside for R&D. Again, we vote for that. And what is left over, the 4th slice, is for bonuses. I thought, gotcha, bonuses. You need to have a management structure to decide who gets the bonuses. They said, no, this is how it works. Every employee gets 100 merit points, brownie points, and they can distribute it to everybody except themselves, to anybody except themselves. And they distribute it on the basis of whom they want to reward for their contribution to the company, whom they want to keep really, because if they don't get the bonus, maybe they will leave. And these are the people that are adding value to the company. And then at the end of the day, when all these brownie points have been distributed, everybody gets a bonus, a share of the bonus pie or slice in proportion to how many brownie points they received. So this is how, so suddenly, think about it. Imagine a situation where a corporation has shareholders equal to the number of people working in there, and each one of them has 1 share that cannot be traded. It's like a library card that you get when you go to university. It's very useful, you can't trade it. You get 1, don't get 10. You can't buy them, okay? And then if you leave the company, you leave that share and you take part of the capital that corresponds to you and you take it to another company, or you create your own company, your own outfit together with other people. So think of that. The moment you introduce this very, very radical idea, capitalism collapses, because suddenly there is no distinction between profits and wages. Everybody is a profit sharer, and there are no wages. Secondly, there are no share markets. If you take share markets out of the equation, Barclays Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, JP Morgan collapse. The way the big banks work is they don't work from your current account and your savings account. They work by lending huge quantities of money to stockbrokers, to financiers, to do mergers and acquisitions. But if you can't buy shares, you cannot do mergers and acquisitions. Also, the large companies break down because if you're going to have this kind of democratic structure, you can't have a company with 30,000 people. So naturally, it will divide and multiply into smaller companies. You have more competition, right? And if the central bank, imagine the Bank of England were to give each one of you folks in the United Kingdom, or the European Central Bank, each one of us here in Europe, a free digital bank account, with a central bank. What's the point of having an account with Lloyd's or Barclays Bank? So suddenly, share markets go, banking goes, capitalism is gone. And instead we have, so, this is how I try to imagine the other now that I've written about.
Well done. Well done for finding appealing and appropriately fictionalized way of conveying that. I like the title Another Now, and I saw the cover, which I know I'm not supposed to judge a book by, that it did have a sort of somewhat, it was reminiscent of the anarcho-syndicalist flag that you described, in that there was a white half and a black half to it.
Indeed.
I like the sort of high concept, the psychedelic
Could you allow me
concept.
to read the first sentence of the book?
Who would stand in your way, dear comrade?
Okay. I remember, this is a novel, right? It's a science fiction novel. So it starts as follows. A year ago today, we buried Iris in a red and black coffin. Red for the revolutionary fire constantly blazing in her belly, and black to remind us, as she kept doing, of the irreducible dark side in us all.
There is an irreducible dark side. I'm trying to reduce my own dark side, as a matter of fact. I'm spending a lot of time on it. Yanis.
What's important actually about this is to create institutions that also help us reduce that dark side and not to maximize it.
I recognize what you were saying. I recognize that the institutions we currently create, the systems that we create, highlight, exacerbate, and promote the darker aspects of our nature, whether it is our unconscious sexuality, our unconscious greed, what are called in the 12-step program that I operate within, defects of character, the shadow aspects of nature that are really survival strategies that have somewhat gone awry. I was very interested in the example of the actual company that you worked at and how they sort of created a somewhat simple economic system. I like that it included meritocracy, but that meritocracy was underwritten democratically. I thought that was interesting. Well, what do you think? Did you enjoy that conversation? Do you think Yanis is onto something, or do you still think, oh, socialists, they're naive, capitalism's great, people aren't just going to come up with inventions? Tell me what you think in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's start talking to one another, even if we don't agree with one another, because we might find if we get deep, we have more in common than we have that divides us. Please consider subscribing to Luminary if you enjoyed this conversation. You can get it off Apple, as I've told you. And please subscribe to my channel as well. And if you enjoyed this video, have a look at this little guy, a cheeky little thing from my Awakening channel, which I'd love you to subscribe to too, so you can get techniques to sort your head out. And this one is a comparable conversation, which you also might enjoy. Sign up to my mailing list on russellbrand.com so we can remain in continual contact. Thank you.